Welcome back to the latest episode of Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. Last time I checked, I'm still Baz Barrett. With me is still Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest. Before we get into our introduction and the rest of this episode's frivolities, we will join the long line of, well, I say people, it's almost most of the world, really, in terms of expressing our condolences for the recent passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Not a universal opinion, we know that, but in terms of basic human level, she was a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, sister, family member, in terms of who had a long life, and in terms of whichever side of the fence you are, had a long-lasting impact upon this country. And I will speak for me, and I'll let Mr. Forrest himself have a moment. But I would say, on behalf of Talk of the Trinity, we express our deepest condolences to the family, and hope that in terms of however the passing is commemorated at football games and in other places over the next week or so, that respectful remembrance is adhered to in terms of those public arenas, because it is a big occasion in the recent history of the country, really. So it's a literally for me and Mr. Trinity, it is a once in a lifetime experience so far. I mean, we've only had one queen, so in terms of that, I don't really have much more to say in respect of that, apart from that. If there's anything you have to say, Will.
I think you're right. It goes down in the history books. It's obviously a very saddening and somber and sobering occasion, really. Everybody will remember where they were when they heard the news about the passing of Elizabeth the Great, really, and she was a fantastic figurehead for our country, in my opinion. Not everybody will agree with that. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions. But as you've mentioned there, however, Villa Park, particularly Villa Park, but the rest of the footballing community, whether you're a fan of a different club who's listening to us because you like our Brummy tones, just be respectful. And if it's a moment's silence, be silent. If it's a moment's applause, applaud, make some noise, just be respectful. Because at the end of the day, regardless of her title and what her job role was, really, she's someone's mother, she's someone's grandmother, she's someone's relative, and you put yourself into the shoes of somebody who's lost a relative, and you would hope that any moments to mark them and remember them would be adhered to accordingly. That's it, really. I'll certainly be participating in whatever is announced at Villa Park on Friday in regards to how they want to mark that moment. I'll be doing it from my own home, but I'll be doing it still.
Indeed. And all of the build up to Friday's game, opinions sought and given, can be found as usual on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, Talk of the Trinity, Talk Trinity. It's been a while since we last recorded, so in terms of trying to remember our own Twitter handle, but Mr. Trinity is all over that, so normal service will be resumed ahead of that game. Or
Okay. Shit.
And you can check out our previous visual episodes on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity. Or if you just like those brummy twangs that Will mentioned just a moment ago, you can just listen to our audio version of the podcast on our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, probably somewhere else, more than one place. We're also on FanHub, I think. I think we're still there. Don't think we've been thrown off in disgrace yet, which always helps. And speaking of people thrown off in disgrace, and a triumphant return. Not us, but the Villa squad list has been announced earlier today, the final 25. And you may have seen in the last week that thrown off in disgrace from the Villa website, Frederick Gilbert. And it was news to him based on his Twitter page when the news was broken that he had been surreptitiously removed from the website, and he found out. But earlier this afternoon, on the day of recording, Villa submitted their 25-man squad, and Gilbert's back. He's in that 25-man squad. Although I did check the website before we went on air at time of recording, his picture's still not there, and neither is he. But in terms of the squad, he is there in the document submitted to the Premier League headquarters. And even though I think it seems fair to say that Gerrard doesn't rate him, you may as well fill that 25-man squad. Players under 21, you don't have to register. But in terms of Gilbert, even if he is out of the reckoning, you never know what's going to happen in terms of we've already got Matt Cashdown injured. And we were talking off air just before we came on. Remember Alan Hutton was in a similar situation a few years ago. Though I know you're a fan of Gilbert, Will, so guessing you must be pretty... I wouldn't call it a redemption, but he's at least if we have a tsunami of injuries, we'll be able to put a team on.
Well, yeah, I think everybody deserves a chance. There's obviously something that's not gone quite to plan for him. If Dino and Stevie G didn't rate him as much, but he's always done quite well out on loan. Who knows? I mean, we've still got Ashley Young to budge first, and then you've probably got Chambers at right back, and then you've got Concert at right back, and then he might put Coutinho at right back. Yep. I still think he'd get in ahead of Sanson and Buendia, though.
So. Though also, this afternoon of time of recording, the potential fullback, right back of the future, Caden Hessler, who was on loan at Huddersfield, still is on loan at Huddersfield at time of recording, but they have just sacked the manager as they sit 23rd in the Championship at time of recording, 7 defeats out of 9. So I anticipate that the Villa scouting department, the individuals who keep an eye on who's out on loan, will be looking carefully over at the Majeski. It's not Majeski, is it? The John Smith Stadium, I think it was. It may be a different sponsor now, wherever Huddersfield play. They will be having a look at whether the new manager will be keeping Caden Hessler in the starting 11, because in January there could be a Louis Barry moment, a triumphant return again if he is not. But we will be keeping an eye on that, and hopefully Freddie Gilbert's Twitter page is a bit happier now he actually has a place in the squad. So we'd call that good news here. We like a comeback kid. So there you go. And speaking of comebacks, the Premier League is coming back on Friday night. The Villa basement battle against Leicester, previously scheduled for the 10th of September, was postponed along with the other Premier League games of that weekend. It happened. Some other sporting events took a different view in terms of whether to carry on. But, there's plenty of space left in the fixture calendar later on in the year. It's not that there's a World Cup going on or anything midway through the season. But Friday night, Premier League, 8 o'clock on Sky Sports in the UK and other providers available across the world, where we welcome Southampton to Villa Park. And previously, we had identified this game as a potential, they say 6-pointer usually. I think this might have been a 12-18-pointer if we had gone to the King Power Stadium and lost. But that game did not happen. So the Man City home game is the previous game that we played in the Premier League. So still can ride that momentum. But speaking in generalities to begin with, Will, it's still a very, very important game for Villa, this one against Southampton on Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, of course. It is, without wanting to use the wrong terminology, Steven Gerrard, I think, has been a little bit fortunate in that the Leicester game got postponed, because if he had have had a bad result against Leicester and had have had a bad result against Southampton, I think regardless of what he's done against Man City, he was probably had his job on the line, didn't he? Really, and we may have been looking elsewhere for a manager, though. Graham Potter wouldn't be the person coming to us. And then you've got to think that after this game, he's got another 2 weeks until we next play, being Leeds away. So he's got that buffer again to turn around and say, well, I can get things sorted within these 2 weeks. It's only going to lose a couple of people to the international fixtures, not too many. I don't think he'll lose many of his main players, except for John McGinn and Martinez.
And Gilbert. He'll be there. Gilbert.
Hey, too right. Freddie G will be showing them what it's all about.
Yep.
He's got someone looking down on him, smiling, hasn't he? Really, it'll be interesting to see whether the Southampton and the Leeds games now are the ones that are looked at, and whether he can get points, because both of those games are games where really we should have found a formation by then, and we should be able to take the game to them. We should be going into both of those games looking to win as well. So, yeah, he maybe has got until the World Cup. Maybe he will have until that period of time, and then we see what happens from there. Maybe Mr. Perslow's giving Tommy or Pottering, and they're going, sorry, wrong number.
Yeah, you get that dial wrong number kind of coming through situation. But I think Leeds away will be tricky. But yes, in terms of that, you mentioned then the 2-week international break after the game on Friday night. That does, as you say, that does kind of lead another couple of weeks in terms of even if the result on Friday doesn't go very well, you can kind of bury it for a couple of weeks as literally a one-off. As it has been over that 3-week period, one game. But turning our attention to the visitors, Southampton. Very early days in the Premier League season, but at time of recording, they sit 12th with 7 points. Their transfer policy in the summer was to go for youth, and they went for youth in a big way. In terms of, it was almost a throwback to previous Southampton, but in terms of, it was seen as a conveyor belt for talent, and they did have a brief dalliance with European qualification places, but they turbocharged it this year. In terms of the silly season rumours, transfer deadline day, a rumour that a player they brought for 12 million in the summer, that somebody offered 50 million for him. I mean, I'm not entirely sure whether that is true or not, but there's been crazy things going on in terms of Chelsea recently that we may have touched upon in recent episodes. Levia, the midfielder that we're talking about, a esteemed pundit, if I recall, predicted some trouble for Southampton this season. Very early days in the Premier League, but based on what you've seen so far, what are you thinking of Southampton? And are you potentially not entirely revisiting your pre-season prediction, but beginning to see that perhaps this Southampton team might not be so bad after all? Or are you doubling down and saying they are definitely getting relegated?
Well, I think you can look at it on two ways, really. Just so that I've got some splinters in my arse, and Mancampton, as they probably should be known as, but never will be known as, because of all the players they've signed from Man City.
Yep.
Really, with Manchester City's reserve team and youth team, they should be able to beat a couple of sides in the Premier League. However, and a few of their players have stepped up a bit. Salisu looking a very good centre half, especially after his shaky beginning for Southampton. They've managed to keep hold of Walker Peters. They've got the likes of Liveramento still, who is currently out injured. Yep. A fantastic signing, if you've listened to any of our previous podcasts with Dave and Liam, in regards to Gavin Bazunu, the goalkeeper. Didn't get off to the greatest start against Tottenham away, but has done well since. Kept hold of Ward Prowse. as you said, they've got Lavia in, who very nearly joined Chelsea. The worry for Southampton remains the strike force. Okay, Shea Adams has got his 2 goals for the season. Put a bet on him now for Friday night.
Well then, Shay.
I know Armstrong's bagged a goal. Stuart Armstrong might get 1 or 2. Redmond very nearly joined Bournemouth. If he didn't join Bournemouth, I don't know. I don't care really. I still think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a sinking feeling for the Saints. I think they're going to be cast adrift on the pattern of their away shirt come the end of the season. And yeah, it's one of those. I don't know whether Hassan Hussle will last the season. He's come very close. You wonder who they're going to lose 9-0 to this season. Maybe us on Friday.
Yeah, we're going to say in terms of Nathan Redmond, having a quick update in terms of the research in a sentence which perhaps you wouldn't have thought to have uttered at the start of the season. Nathan Redmond has joined Dele Alli at Besiktas on a 1-year deal. So from Bournemouth potentially to Besiktas, a slightly. I mean, they might both be near the beach, perhaps. I know Bournemouth is. I'm not quite sure about Besiktas. In all honesty, I know they're near the coast, in bits of Turkey. But yes, I'd agree in terms of goals. Does look like where Southampton may fall down, but in terms of they got an identity again. In terms of the transfers, you mentioned that they brought in during the course of the summer, going young, going hungry, going keen, and whatever other cliches you want to throw at. Yeah, I mean, in terms of average age, one of the youngest in the Premier League this season. So they're going for it and they're sticking to it. And in terms of where they'll come during the course of the season, 12th is where they are currently. I think they bite your hand off for 12th. I think in terms, and I think that represents a good season in terms of, staying in the league, getting those foundations where the last couple of years have been a bit up and down. I mean, well, we'll see if they want a certain centre back to return at the end of the season, or whether we can tempt him with a bag of chips or whatever other things we can find at the back of the sofa. But it should be, in terms of Stuart Armstrong, Adam Armstrong, Stretch Armstrong, they got going on. It's a mixture of those players who've been there a little while and youth, and whether they will go to those previous heights that I mentioned in terms of Europe, we'll wait and see. But it's, I always have a soft spot for a team trying to build youth up. So whether that soft spot extends past the time of recording, definitely not, because we're going into Warzone in terms of before Friday night. And speaking of the Warzone, I mean, probably not really a Warzone. I mean, it is Aston, but it's still all right around there. In terms of the Villa team on Friday, editing, we can get that out. We can't really. We are reading a pre-prepared statement from our lawyers saying Aston is lovely, we love Aston, and all comparisons to Warzones were meant in jest. But in terms of the Villa team for Friday, it's been a little while since we last played. Expecting any changes, surprises in terms of potentially what we may have seen rolled out against Leicester? Do we go, for example, 2 up front?
I think Freddie G starts. No, I don't actually. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see the same lineup again as we played against Manchester City. To be honest with you, the only with that 4-3-2-1, whether it's 2 inverted players or whether it's 2 wide players, and it being the same personnel as well. Jacob Ramsey did very well further forward, as did Leon Bailey. He's been asking for a chance and he managed to get through the 90 minutes, which is a bonus for him. Ollie Watkins up front needs another goal this season, not scored since the Palace game, obviously. Midfield 3, Booba obviously gets in. He's got to be one of the first names on that team sheet for the North versus South Premier League or Premier League match that Tom Bowley mentioned. Again, our Chelsea second podcast will be released later today. Dougie Louise, John McGinn, go for both of them. I think you have to, though I'd like to see John McGinn on that left-hand side of midfield. And surely Ashley Young comes in at right back after the way that he played last time, the fantastic tackles he was putting in on Foden, De Bruyne, cutting out the ball. He's got that experience as well. So, yeah, I'm expecting that. I expect us to attack a little bit more though, and to throw the three that are the main forwards higher up the pitch and to lead them up the pitch where we can. Get John McGinn a bit further forward as well through the centre. With maybe Dougie holding the central ground a bit more with Booba. Though, maybe it'll be a game for Coutinho, especially after him being left out of the Brazilian squad for the first time in quite a while, and with the World Cup only round the corner.
Yep, not a good time. Not a good time to fall out of contention.
He's going to have to start pulling it out of the bag again for us, I think. And if he can replicate his performance from last season against Southampton, then surely we're on our way to leaving Aston with 3 points.
I'll throw a hypothetical out for you then, considering talking about Coutinho falling out of, well, we're not going to say falling out of contention. He has not been named in the Brazil squad for their upcoming games. If Coutinho does not make the World Cup squad for Brazil and he's in and out of the team for Villa, does he go knocking on the door in Stevie G's door in January going, yeah, I kind of had enough here now. I fancy those bright lights of the MLS or other certain leagues in the Middle East whereby money is not at a premium in terms of their salaries. Then do we end up reading about him saying it was a massive mistake coming to Villa?
I don't think he'll say it was a massive mistake coming. He lit it up when he first joined, and he's definitely got the quality. It's just making sure that he fits the system that we want to play rather than the system fits him, unless that's what Gerrard wants to do. I still think that there's hope for him and Buendia playing in the same team as one another. They showed previously in that 2-2 draw against Man United in games away to other teams as well, Leeds, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong there. That they played well together. Southampton at home. No, Buendia didn't start in that one, did he? But they played well together. I can see Coutinho potentially leaving at the end of the season if things aren't going his way and getting a transfer for a nominal fee to a Middle Eastern team. And I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago on one of the podcasts. Can't remember which one it is, so go and have a listen and see and let us know. But I hope it doesn't come to that. Coutinho has got to have been one of the most exciting signings in our lifetime as Aston Villa fans. Even when he joined on loan, it was incredibly exciting that a player of his ilk would want to join us. I think he'll turn it round. And regardless of whether it's Steven Gerrard as manager, which I hope it is, I hope he's successful and he turns it round himself. I think Coutinho has a big part to play for us this season, and it's only a matter of time before he gets back into the team. He gets a run of games and shows exactly what he can do. He needs a goal or an assist, and it's a shame that one against Man City was ruled out because the linesman decided to put his flag up. Whether it would have gone in or not afterwards, only we know that it would have gone in.
Most definitely. And we are going to go full optimistic on a Coutinho bandwagon and say we look forward to seeing Coutinho score in the World Cup. I was going to say we'll say World Cup final. He'll score the World Cup final. That doesn't rule out England winning the World Cup, although I'm sure the schematics of the draw may mean it rules it out. But anyway, Coutinho in the World Cup, scoring some goals, doing well for Villa. What more could you want? And in terms of scoring goals for Villa, what more could you possibly want? Mentioning the potential two up front and sticking perhaps instead with Watkins, with Bailey and Ramsey alongside. I would agree with you with that. I mean, earlier on in the season, we were talking about perhaps in terms of these type of games, maybe go for two up front. It's seen as going for the jugular, going for the attack in terms of games at home against teams who, whether rightly or wrongly, expect or anticipate you might have a better chance of picking 3 points up against. I think we just got to start in terms of just getting some momentum following on from that Man City game. Got a result. I'd keep it rolling in terms of start of the season. Wasn't really, well, for whatever reasons, didn't really work with two up front. Let's go with a hot hand, see what we got. So in terms of, I would agree with the three. And you mentioned Ashley Young at fullback. Could be Freddie G. There could be a training ground accident. Ashley Young slips on a little model car left kind of by the door, perhaps. But no, you'd expect Young to play if Cash is injured, which at time recording, we're led to believe he's out until after the international break. So a 4-3-3, or if you're being more defensive minded, a 4-5-1, depending if you're looking like that. Got the team set. Talked about the opposition. Now they've got to play the 90 minutes. What are you thinking in terms of the result?
I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling very positive going into the weekend. I predicted a 4-1 victory away to Leicester last time out, and I still think that we're going to have that positivity. I do see us playing more of a counter-attacking game, because I think we are a better counter-attacking team under Gerrard rather than the possession-based. When we have more possession, we tend to lose. It's when we have those 5%, 20%, 34.3% possessions that we actually create better chances, and we take them, and we take the moments, as Gerrard would say.
It does rely on the opposition being happy to take the lead in terms of possession, though.
Yeah, and I think Southampton will be coming to make a statement to show that last year was a fluke, that they've got this young squad who do want to push, who do want to get better, who want to get to that 40-point buffer as quickly as they possibly can. Remember, Southampton had more possession than us last season in the home game, and it was only slight. It was something like 56-44 type of a margin. I do think that they'll try to do the same, though they're most dangerous at their set pieces. I wouldn't say corners. You watch they'll score a corner now, Shay Adams corner, they go for your bet builder. It's more those free kicks and James Ward-Prowse, especially with that David Beckham target in sight for him for set piece goals. I can see Southampton scoring a couple. I think they get the 2 goals against us. However, I can see us at least doubling that. I think on the counter with Leon Bailey and JJ running rampant, and then bringing little Phil on later on. I was going to go for 4. I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. Ooh. And in the words of the great Barney Stinson, I'm going to go for the highest of 5s. And I'm going to say Aston Villa 5, Southampton 2.
Positive Will back in the building.
Yeah,
now, you mentioned the 4-0 Villa win when the two sides previously met at Villa Park in March. Would you like to hazard a guess who was playing centre-back for Southampton on that day?
Was it Jan Bednarek?
It was, yes, along with Jack Stevens. Livramento, who's injured, and Perrault was the back 4. But, well, is it going to be a blessing for Southampton, or is he going to be playing for Villa and returning the favour? We're anticipating it'll be Mings and Konsa playing centre-back. But in terms of my prediction, I think it's a tricky one in terms of when we did the Leicester preview for the game that did not take place. As you mentioned, you had Villa winning 4-1. I had a draw. This time you've got 5-2 for Villa. And there is part of me that is still thinking, I think it's going to be a draw. Again, in terms of, it's one of those games whereby, as I mentioned earlier, Villa will have identified this game as one where they need to be picking up the 3 points in order to alleviate the pressure. And we comfortably beat them last year, as we may mention once or twice in the last 5 minutes. YouTube viewers will see me ruminating in front of their very eyes, whilst people listening on our audio providers will be wondering if the sound has gone for those couple of seconds there. I am going to go for... I think Southampton will score. I agree. I mean, that's not usually the most outlandish prediction for a Villa defence. Currently, I think we're going to score as well. So do I go 1-1 or do I go 2-1 with a late scrambled Ashley Young type winning situation? I'm going to go for a draw, 1-1. So in terms of our merchandise, people will be absolutely delighted that they can ring up our suppliers and say, get that negative Baz merchandise back from the printers. We're back in action with those contradictory predictions from Positive Will and Negative Baz. But
it was like a game show where someone spins a wheel like a fortune, and you're there thinking, right, you've got this beautiful prize, and you can gamble and let's see what you could win. Oh, yeah, you can have this car, you can have this house, you can have this trip to Cadbury World, overrated, and you can have this lovely pair of illuminate socks with grip on them so that when you take your wheelie bin out, you're not going to slip on the juice. And or you walk away with nothing and you lose absolutely everything. And mate, everybody there collectively groaned and walked away with nothing.
Well, we'll walk away with something on Friday if either of our predictions are right. We'll get something. I mean, maybe a crushing sense of disappointment, perhaps, but something that never gives you a crushing sense of disappointment is an episode of Talk of the Trinity, and that is a link to end this episode. And will we all be celebrating like positive? Well, I mean, I'll be celebrating if we win, although in terms of for reasons, I'm hoping it's not 5-2 because I won't be able to watch it on Friday night. So if I find out I've missed an absolutely cracking game and I don't get a chance to see it on catch up before being told the score, then that would be, very disappointing news for me for a second until I see the league table and us rising up there like a proverbial phoenix. But speaking of things that you can see our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby you can keep up to date with the latest Villa news, although I probably won't be going on there Friday night because I don't want to know the score. But you can go there beforehand with the previews, polls, predictions, comments. You can retweet, like. I don't think there's a hate button on Twitter, but don't do that, in terms of positive will, positive comments. That's what we're looking for. Or you can check out our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, for all our episodes, past and present. Or you can listen to our game show episodes on our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, or on FanHub and other places are available as well for your Villa content. But before I pass you over to Mr. Trinity, and before I get handed a letter from our lawyers in respect of potential claims, thank you very much for joining us. Good to be back, and we will be with you again soon.
Yeah, just a massive thank you to everybody who's listening to the podcast via their podcast providers or watching beautiful facades on on YouTube. I just have a few things to say as to end the video, and that is that Aston is the most beautiful and loveliest area outside of where I live. It's probably even better, actually, to be honest with you. That's Will, who loves Aston. There we go. But this Friday night, let's hope that we aren't leaving pointless that we can expose the weakest link in that Southampton team, and that tipping point gives us an advantage as we chase a spot higher up the league and we celebrate with a Saturday night takeaway. Yes, take that away. And yeah, sorry.
Well,
Cheers, Tom.
they want to end. In terms of that, enjoy the countdown to the game.
Oh, mate, you had 15 to 1 of the ones that you could have gone with, but there we go. There won't be any Bazzi's house party. If you know, early 90s, blobby, blobby, blobby. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Villa till I die. Up the Villa.